I'd like to welcome everybody today and a talk I'm going to give about crazy wisdom. And I want to explain what I mean about that and how it fits into the work or the discussions we've had in the past from the Satipatthana Sutta. But I've been studying Eastern philosophy for a while, and I've always run into some of the sayings that I hear that sound like people are crazy. And I'll give an example. Nothing is real. Well, I think I live in a real world. It rains, I get hit on the head, things go wrong. Um, but I think that and a lot of the examples of crazy wisdom are kind of exaggerations, but with some truth in it. And in the case of nothing is real, what I've come to learn and when I experienced both through understanding psychology and understanding meditation and Buddhism is that the world is so much more who we are, what we see, we project on the world. Um, if 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 we're from a specific family, we see our family as the center. We might have our religious views, and other people have different views. We have some political views, and other people have different views. But they see the whole world through the lens of your values, your experience. Um, if you've had a difficult situation with your mother, you might tend to look at women differently and feel afraid of them or not like them. Or if you had a difficult experience with your father, you might project that on. Net is, the world is real, but it's not real in the way we see it. When we see people that are good or bad, it's labeled based on our values. Another one of the crazy wisdom things that I'm going to focus on is called no self. There's no self. And I think some of the Buddhist philosophers might say, well, there's no self. And, I have this crazy wisdom. I understand self better than you. But what they are getting at is not that there's no self. There is no inherently existent self. And what does that mean? Are you or me inherently young? Are we inherently wise? Are we inherently compassionate? Are you your name or your actions or your legs? What is it about us? So much of who we are changes over time. We could do some take actions that are wise or some that are unwise. But that doesn't make us like this permanent thing, unwise permanently or wise permanently. We're constantly changing. We aren't the way we look at ourselves. And I am in the Satipatthana Sutta, the fourth foundation. The five aggregates are the Buddha's explanation of why there is no self. And that's authentic in the sense that Buddha talked about the five aggregates and explained why there's no self. What I've seen in that is I think there's truth in it, but it's not really helpful to me. But I want to at least explain from the Buddhist perspective what no self means, how Buddha came up with that. So there's an authentic way of describing no self from a Buddhist perspective that isn't all that helpful to me. On the other hand, I see how I've distorted myself in a way that hasn't served me well and is practical. Well, this is Stan Merrill's view of it. It's not the Buddha's view of what no self is, but this is, to me, something practical. And through the talk, I'm going to go through both and I'll identify what they are. I also am doing this from the foundation, I'm talking about it now because we've been studying the four foundations. The four foundations are the four areas that we ought to be focusing on, that we will gain wisdom from if we focus on. First of all, the body. And two things, just by breathing and focusing on the breath. One, it stops the thinking mind. And unfortunately, too much of the time I see for myself, and maybe for a lot of people, it's like Walter Mitty land. We're living in the dreams about regrets about the past or fears of the future. So we're walking around. If we can focus on our body and stay in the present moment, we shut out this stuff that drives a lot of negative actions. That's one way it's important to be aware of what's going on in your body. The second is that the body can be a wake-up call. I know whenever I have a tightness in my chest, something's bothering me. And the more upset I am, the more likely it is I'll do something that I'll regret. So when I notice there's a change in my physiology, I try and understand what it is that triggered it and how can I respond in a way that doesn't make it worse. So that's the first foundation, is the body. The second foundation is feelings. And it's a feeling tone, whether I feel negative or positive. And when something happens, I'm going to immediately have a response, either positive, negative, or neutral. But if I feel positive, it'll trigger a greed, a desire, a craving to have it. If it's negative, I want to get rid of it. But both become agitations that could drive me to do something that I regret. Example of positive, I see a chocolate chip cookie, I'm already full, I'll eat it, I'll feel bad. And that positive desire has caused me to do something that hurt my body. Negative is someone says something I don't like, and I could yell back at them and ruin a relationship. But if you can catch it at the trigger point, as soon as you notice, then you might be able to do something about it. You might not catch it at the point where it's just a feeling, but then that could go to the mind and trigger emotions of hatred or anger, or emotions of desire and clinging, and thoughts that go along with this that drive the anger or drive the desire and clinging. When you can be aware of that's happening, you can wake up and at least ask the question, what can I do? It would be skillful and helpful and compassionate. But you have to wake up. Otherwise, you're driven by that anger, driven by that desire, and you're not fully in control. The fourth foundation is the Dhammas. And we talked about it before, the factors of awakening and the hindrances. And one of the other Dhammas, the other categories, are the five aggregates. And these are the Dhammas we haven't covered. I have previously here, but we haven't covered them yet. The five aggregates and the Four Noble Truths. So I want to go over what that five aggregates are and explain how that leads to no self from the Buddhist perspective. There's material form, and I'm going to do two things. I'm going to describe it, and I'm going to take an example of a dog barking and what winds up happening to us. There's a process that goes on with us over and over and over again and drives our behavior. Material form is the trigger. Something outside of us, a sight or a sound or a taste, will trigger. Material form. Let me take the case of a dog barking. The material form is molecular vibrations called sound, and they enter your ear. So you have the sensation of sound. Almost immediately, what will happen is you'll have a feeling, the positive or the negative. Let me take the example of a negative feeling. Oh, that's noise. I hear it as noise. because your feeling is negative. I don't like noise. The third step is to look at it more closely, cognition. What was that noise? Oh, you can recognize it was a dog. You can label it as noise. You're familiar with this because of past experiences. You've heard dogs before, so you know where that was coming from. And you project your values on there. You want quiet. I'm taking a nap. I don't want to be bothered. Then once you have realized what's going on, you've had the feeling, you've had the emotion, you'll want to do something. You'll have some reactivity. You may wind up shouting at the dog. And there's consciousness. That's a narrative that goes on. Oh, my neighbor is a lousy neighbor who doesn't keep the dog quiet. Know that you've been annoyed. And this sense of self, of who we are, is driven by, we want the world a certain way. We want it without noise. We want to always be right. And from this chain of command, this creates a sense of self. And this sense of self doesn't serve us well. We're reactive. We do things that don't help us. And Joseph Goldstein mentioned something called lab consciousness. If you watch a laboratory retriever go out in a yard, he'll go in one direction, smell something, then he'll go somewhere else. But essentially, he's triggered by something in material form, a smell, a sound, goes after it. And that's exactly what we are. We're always kind of like chasing our tails, following whatever a material form triggers it. And this, Buddha said, there is no inherently existent self. We are just made up of all these prejudices and trainings, and they cause us to react in a certain way. But that's not inherent in us. It's how we were learned. It's how we were trained. And no self doesn't mean that there isn't any self. And this is a quote from the Dalai Lama. Selflessness is not a case of something that existed in the past becoming non-existent. Rather, this sort of self is something that never did exist. What is needed is to identify non-existent something that always was non-existent. What I've said is I'm kind of repeating the teachings as I understand it from Buddha about no self. And I think it's authentic. I think it's the way the Buddha said it. I may not be articulating it exactly right, but that's my best understanding of what the Buddha was getting at. This is what I see when I'm meditating. That's personal experience. Maybe the Buddha wouldn't describe it this way, but this is the way I describe it. When I make a mistake, I feel horrible. I have this predetermined vision of who I want myself to be. I want to be a perfect person. I want to never make a mistake. I'd like to be young all my life. I'd like to be healthy all my life, but that's not the way it is. And I have this ideal image of how I'd like to be. And that's my sense of self. And that my sense of self is not helpful to me. I beat myself up if I'm not perfect. If I don't get 100 on a test, I'll question. I make a mistake, I feel bad. I want to be right on every argument because I like to think I'm the perfect person. So I get into arguments and it hurts relationship. So the more I identify with this perfect individual that I'd like to be, this self, this unreal self, this persona, the more miserable I'm going to be because I'm going to seek to be perfect. I want to stay young. I want to be smart. I want to make always good decisions. And I won't be. I'll be disappointed. And I'm leading myself into misery. And this sense of self, the persona, is what's causing a lot of my unhappiness. And when I'm aware of this, I might be able to do something about it. The Beatles said it another way. There was a song the Beatles had, me, 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 mine. And we all see ourselves in the center of the universe. When we die, it's like the whole world is over. My family is more important than everybody else's family. My country is more important. My political beliefs are right. My religious beliefs are right. You know, me, me, me. I'm it. I'm it. And from a Jungian perspective, we have complexes. We've been trained to be a good person and trained of how we should think and how we should feel. And when we're not that way, it triggers a lot of complexes and there's a lot of energy. And we respond to situations the way we did as a child. If we had an authoritarian father, well, we whatever way we defended ourselves as a child, with an authoritarian father, some people survive by just doing everything they say. And then as an adult, you do that. Or you may have an authoritarian father and you fight him and argue and scream and yell at him. And then as you grow up and become an adult, you'll argue, scream, and yell at your boss, your wife, your children. So we develop these behavior patterns, and we're living our life out of these behavior patterns we had as a child. And we see ourselves as very important. We're the center of the universe. And one of the classes I taught before, Goldstein described meditation this way. Mindfulness is observing what is happening. We observe what's happening, what's going on in this present moment. The second thing is, how do we relate to it? And the dog barking in his example, we treat it as noise and we get angry. The third step is get some insight and wisdom. A dog is barking. It's just doing what dogs do. It's just sound. And a lot more problem comes from me staying up all night being angry about the neighbor or angry at the dog. And the wisdom we can get when we watch what we're doing, when we're meditating, when we become aware, is that often decisions are driven by ego. We need to be right, perfect, which causes misery. We get into bum arguments, self-deprecation, and we live by make decisions on what we think people will think of us. And the goal we have in mind when we're doing meditation is equanimity in spite of the situation. But our need to defend the ego stands in the way of this. Okay, and I'd like to close out now with a meditation. Find a comfortable position. If you'd like to, you could lie on the floor. You could sit in a chair. or sit cross-legged on the floor, whatever you're most comfortable with. If you're sitting in a chair, it might be good to have your feet flat on the ground, your spine erect. And if you feel comfortable, gently close your eyes. And what I'd like you to do now is count to 3 as you breathe in, count to 3 as you breathe out. And after a couple breaths, keep increasing the count. Do not go beyond 10 and do not strain. Breathing long, slow, and deep triggers the relaxation response. Counting takes the thinking mind away from rumination and negativity and brings it into the present moment. And now, pick a place in your body where you feel the breath most vividly. Could be your nostril, your chest, or your navel. Continue to count, continue to breathe deeply, but also get a felt sense of the breath. And now stop breathing deeply. Just get a felt sense of the breath, breathing normally. Eventually, there'll be a wave of experience, a thought, an emotion. When this happens, gently and kindly and compassionately, move your focus back to the breath. Label it. It's just a thought. It's just an emotion. And bring your attention back to the breath. Be curious about the breath. Do you really feel it vividly? Does your focus and concentration change from breath to breath? Be curious. Does the depth and length of the breath change? The next time your mind wanders, notice what it feels like that second when you realize your mind has wandered and you wake up to the fact your mind has wandered. That's mindfulness, being aware of what you're aware of, being aware that your mind has wandered, being aware that you're in thought. That's what mindfulness is. when you are mindful in this present moment. There are no regrets of the past, no fear of the future, just present moment naked awareness, just the felt sensations, the form, material form, thoughts, sounds, sights. Now smile. Say to yourself, thank you, thank you, thank you. And think about all the things we're grateful for and the people that we're grateful to. Keep repeating, thank you, thank you. May you be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to you. May you always meet with spiritual success. May you also have the patience, courage, understanding, and determination to meet and overcome the inevitable problems, difficulties, and failures in life. May you rise above them with morality, integrity, forgiveness, compassion, mindfulness, and wisdom. Rub your hands together and then cover your eyes. Gently open them. When you feel comfortable, remove them. Then raise your hands over your head. And I want to thank everyone here for their presence, for their contributions. And I want to wish everyone a happy holiday season. Thank you for attending, and have a good week and a happy holiday season.